Africa continues to have good ties with the United States. It also can only get better under the new President Biden. In recent years, many countries on the continent have been experiencing steady economic growth, and this is attracting American investors. One U.S. organization seeks to continue to connect U.S. business interests to Africa. The Corporate Council on Africa was established in 1993 to promote business and investment between the U.S. and the nations of Africa. It serves as a neutral, trusted intermediary connecting its member firms with the essential government and business leaders they need to do business and to succeed. So to discuss its work and business relations on the continent, further I'm joined by the Corporate Council on Africa's President Emeritus Stephen Hayes. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. I know it's a bit of a dodgy hour for you there, Stephen, so very good to have you with us. Tell us what your focus is going to be on this year. How do you improve the connection between the two?
Well, the President Emeritus is a retired position in the sense it's an honorary position, but I'm still very active in Africa in a number of ways. I think the administration really hasn't developed its policy towards Africa yet. I think that that's because of the politics in the United States, which I think everyone's very familiar with. But I think that that strategy is going to evolve fairly quickly. I think that the administration's policy towards Africa will be based on, to some extent, where they see the problems. That the issue of terrorism is a problem. It's because it's an impediment to business. And so I think the administration will be looking at those areas where they can make a difference, plus strengthen the countries that are moving forward very well. I was looking at the IMF report. There's a fairly positive picture for Africa for over the next 2 years. I think that, as your earlier news story pointed out, that COVID may affect that quite a bit, but I think there's a lot of uncertainty coming.
Interesting that the U.S. will be focusing on addressing problems in order to create a better relationship, and that's good to hear. So let's talk a little bit about COVID. We've seen a very successful vaccination campaign in the U.S. When it comes to the U.S.'s trade partners and in Africa, I mean, is this something that they can help Africa with? Because a stronger, healthier continent can only be better for business.
I think it's something they have to help Africa with, because I don't see many other countries stepping up at this stage.
No.
We have a lot of the supply. We're going to have to look at ways to use that supply to help other countries, and I think particularly countries that are in greatest need. And Africa is certainly being hit hard now by COVID, particularly in leadership. I noticed certainly on East Africa, but I think it's throughout. So I think there's got to be stronger cooperation between Africa and the United States, and I think it's one of the few countries that really can step up now.
What are your thoughts when it comes to dealing with a country like South Africa? We, like many other countries, have a massive, crippling corruption problem, but also, I mean, this is exacerbated by the lack of energy. We don't have sustainable energy in this country.
That's absolutely true, and I think that's a major problem throughout Africa. And I also think that the lack of linkages from country to country is hurting in terms of developing a power grid. So I also think that investment in energy is going to have to be a major, I guess, incentive for private sector investors especially. And I also think that there's a room for almost everybody. Certainly China has been leading in that area, but I think that there's certainly a real opportunity for the United States to become far more engaged in energy as well.
Okay, once we've got this right, what makes Africa attractive to the U.S.? What sort of trade benefits should be discussed? Where does the AGOA agreement sit in all of this?
Well, I think the AGOA agreement will probably expire in 2025, and I think we've got to look at new models. AGOA has served well in some areas, in other words, it hasn't worked quite as well. I think that a new set of arrangements and a new concept in terms of trade relations is going to have to evolve. What that's going to be yet, I don't know, but particularly I think the Continental Free Trade Agreement is going to have an effect on that as well. It's going to make it harder to ignore some countries and work with only certain other countries. So I think that the whole trade relationship is going to change, and I think that will evolve probably not for another 2 or 3 years, but I think now is the time to start thinking about what we're going to do between the United States and Africa. To answer your question, the appeal, well, it's the same appeal that China had to the United States 30 years ago. 1 billion people or more, in fact, in Africa. That was what China had, a market that is largely untapped. It's going to be, I think, the world's newest, largest market. And so that's got to be an appeal to not simply the United States, but everybody else in the world. And China certainly has seen that. So I think there's just extraordinary opportunities. But to make those happen, there's a number of things that have to change. You mentioned the corruption, massive corruption, in your words, in South Africa. I'm glad you said that. The issue of violence in East Africa in the Horn of Africa especially, is going to affect, I think, the whole of East Africa if that's unless that can be changed too. So I think those are the issues that have to be addressed. But I do think that the opportunities for cooperation are just enormous.
Very good to talk to you, Stephen Hayes. Thank you.